My husband is the kind of man people point to as an example. He works hard, shows up, remembers my favorite snacks, helped plan the wedding of my dreams. But there was exactly one way he would be fully present with me in our marriage, and it had nothing to do with love. It had to do with whether I was willing to be with someone else first. I didn't understand what that meant about us for a very long time. By the time I did, I had already done things I can never undo. I met my husband when I was in high school. He was a senior, I was younger, and we started as friends the way most great loves claim to start. Slowly, without ceremony, like something that was always going to happen eventually. There was nothing dramatic about the beginning. He was funny and steady and made me feel like the most seen person in any room we shared. By the time we were actually together, it felt less like a beginning and more like a confirmation of something we already knew. We had real challenges early on. His mother went through a serious mental health crisis during those first years, and somehow that storm passed through both of our families, my grandmother and his mother managing to pull my husband and me into the tension between them. It was a lot for two young people to navigate, but we did it. We stayed. That felt like proof of something. We got engaged about 2 months after I graduated. I remember being happy. Genuinely, uncomplicated happy. In a way I have spent a lot of time trying to get back to since then. We had plans. I wanted to wait until we were more settled before having children. We were living in a full house, money was tight, and I needed us to have a real foundation before we started building a family on top of it. He agreed or said he did. He got a better job. Things were moving in the right direction. What I did not know yet was that something was also moving underneath the surface of my marriage that I was not going to see clearly until it had already reshaped everything. We had been engaged for about a year when he brought it up. He framed it gently, the way you frame something you know is going to land badly. A new interest. Something he had been thinking about. He wanted me, just me, without him present, to be with someone else. He said it could be a man or a woman. He said it was about the fantasy of it. He said it was something he really wanted to explore. I said no immediately, clearly and without hesitation. Then he brought up something I had said years before I even knew him as more than a friend. A joke I had made about a couple I was close to at the time. Something offhand about being their third. I had been a teenager. It was not serious. It had not meant anything. But he held it up like evidence and said I had sounded serious when I said it, like he had been cataloging my words for later use without me knowing. I explained that I was bi-curious in the way a lot of people are. A general awareness, not a need or a plan. I also told him that anything resembling an open relationship was completely off the table for me. I was not interested in that life. I did not want it. He nodded. The conversation ended. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. What followed was not a series of dramatic confrontations. It was quieter than that, and somehow that made it harder to recognize for what it was. He would bring it up in long conversations that went nowhere, always circling back to the same point. That because he was my first and only partner, I had missed out on something I deserved to experience. I told him every single time that I did not feel that way about my own life, that I was not sitting with some secret grief about experiences I never had, that the narrative he was building around my history did not match anything I actually felt. He kept saying it anyway. The conversations got longer, the fights got bigger, then they went private, and then they disappeared from plain sight altogether, because he found a more effective method. He started bringing it up during intimacy. Not every time, but often enough that I began to brace myself. To wait for the moment when the conversation I did not want to have would surface inside the moments I most wanted to feel close to him. I remember one specific night when I asked him to stop. I told him clearly that if he was going to talk about this, I did not want to continue. He kept going. He finished. And then, afterward, he pointed to my body's physical response as proof that I was secretly interested, that my biology had betrayed what my words were denying. He said I should just try it and see. I want to be precise about what that did to me. It taught me that my body was not my own evidence. It taught me that my stated feelings were subject to reinterpretation. It taught me that saying no was not a final answer. It was just an opening position in a negotiation I never agreed to be in. I began telling him I would think about it just to make the conversations stop. It worked temporarily, but I felt guilty for not meaning it, and guilt has a way of making people do things they would never otherwise do. I downloaded an app. I matched with a few people. I even planned a meeting. A stranger, our house, a situation I had never wanted and could not actually go through with. I canceled before it happened. I deleted everything. I told myself it was over and that I had just been going through a strange moment of pressure-induced confusion. But I had done something I could not fully undo, and some part of me knew it. My husband said nothing for a few months. The silence felt almost like relief, like maybe the chapter had closed on its own, but it had not closed. It had just paused. When it started again, it started the same way. Intimacy, then the conversation, then the slow, familiar pressure. I told him I genuinely could not be that vulnerable with a stranger, that one-night encounters were not something I was capable of separating from my emotions. He had an answer ready. He said I did not have to keep it casual. I could date someone, build something real with them. He just wanted to remain my primary person. I want you to sit with that for a moment. My fiancé, the man I was weeks away from marrying, gave me permission to develop genuine feelings for someone else. He said that was fine. That was the solution he offered. It worked, in the worst possible way. I met someone who was genuinely kind, who had thoughtful conversations with me, who made me understand for the first time that my husband might be right, that maybe I did have something to explore. I was not in love, but I was closer to going through with it than I had ever been. And then my husband found out how close I was getting, and he backed out. He told me, directly and without ambiguity, that if I went through with it, he would consider it infidelity. He would leave. So I stopped. I was not angry at first. I was just tired, a kind of bone-deep exhaustion that had nothing to do with sleep. I told him that the conversation was closed, and my answer from that point forward was no, and I meant it, and he needed to accept it. He said he understood. He always said he understood. We got married. It was everything I had ever wanted. The wedding I had pictured. The moment I had held on to through all the difficult years before it. Standing there, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Like we had made it through something. Like the hard part was behind us. 2 months after the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. The man who showed up during my pregnancy was the man I had fallen in love with in the first place. Kind without conditions. Attentive in ways that felt effortless. Funny in the way that only works when someone knows you completely. He took care of me. He was present in every way I had needed him to be, and had not always been. I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop, and let myself just be happy. I have thought a lot about that period since. About how clearly he was capable of being that person. About what it means that he chose not to be, outside of that window. My birth was not what I had prepared myself for. I will not walk through the details because I am still walking through them in my own interior. What I will say is that it left marks, not just physical ones. I spent weeks afterward feeling disconnected from my own baby in a way that frightened me, a kind of numbness my body had installed to protect me from something it could not process. I was working through it. I was getting better, but I was not okay yet. 3 weeks after delivery, my husband sat down beside me and asked again. I do not have language for what that felt like. I have tried to find it, and I keep failing. There is something about timing that changes the character of a request. And asking that particular question, in that particular moment, revealed something about how he saw me that I have not been able to unsee. I said nothing. I did not have the energy to fight. I was going back to work in a few weeks, handling every night, feeding on my own even though my daughter was on formula, and trying to find my way back to feeling like a mother. The conversation stayed in the room with me long after he stopped speaking. Our daughter was 3 months old. I have been trying to figure out how to write this section, and I am not sure there is a clean way to do it, so I will just be honest. The years of conversation had done what they were designed to do. I was tired in a way I could not think past. I was not myself in any recognizable sense. And I had run out of whatever it was inside me that had kept saying no. I went to the first person I found. I was nauseous before it started and nauseous through all of it. I thought about my daughter the entire time, about getting back to her, about whether she had gone down for her nap, about what I was doing and why and how far from myself I had traveled. When it was finally over, I wanted nothing more than to go home and stand under hot water until I felt like myself again. My husband had a condition before that was possible. I stood in the shower for a long time afterward. I scrubbed my skin the way you scrub something you are trying to erase. I was not crying. I was something past crying. It happened a second time. I will not describe it except to say that the second time I came home and had a breakdown so complete I nearly fainted. I called my husband every name I had been holding back for years. I told him I was done. I told him this was his fault, that he had built this piece by piece with his words and his timing and his patience, and then handed me the bill. His response was that I should try it a third time to be certain. I told him no. I said it the way I should have said it years earlier, not as an opening position, but as a wall. I slammed my foot down and I did not move. He tried to bring it up again during intimacy. One more time, the old familiar method. I had found language by then for what had been happening to me, and I used it. I told him what it was called. He went quiet. He has not brought it up since. Our marriage is still here. I am not sure what that means. There are good days. Days that remind me of who we were before all of this started, before the request that never really went away. Days when he is the man I chose, thoughtful and funny and present. And I can almost pretend that those other years happened to different people. On those days, I love him easily. On the other days, I carry something so heavy I cannot name it without shaking. He has told me that if I keep returning to the past, there is no future worth having. So I stay quiet. I do not bring it up. I hold what happened in a room inside myself, and I keep the door mostly closed because opening it costs more than I have on most days. But here is what I know. Even on the quietest days when we are almost fine, something was done to me. Not in a single moment, but across years, slowly and deliberately, by someone who knew exactly where my edges were. I did not lose myself all at once. I lost myself in small increments, during long conversations and in moments of intimacy, in the space between what he said he wanted and what he was actually building. My daughter does not know any of this. She just knows that when I hold her like she is everything, because she is. She came into the world during the worst of it, and she has no idea that her existence was the only thing that kept some version of me anchored. We are set up for counseling. Some days I think I will go. Some days I think there is not a counselor alive who can put back what got taken apart over that many years. I fluctuate between the two positions depending on what the day looks like. What I want, and I am saying this for the first time in a long time, is to be a person again. Not a wife negotiating the terms of her own dignity. Not a mother running on empty. Not the woman who stood in that shower. A person with the kind of wholeness I had before I started letting someone else's narrative replace my own. I do not know yet if I get to have that. But I am still here, and I am still asking the question, and I think that matters for something.